Evening, I'm going to call the Select Board meeting to order for Monday, September 23rd, 2024, and announce that we are going into executive session. If I could get a motion, Pete?
Executive session, item A, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with all non-union personnel and to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief. Item B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 22F. G, to review, approve, and/or discuss the possible release of executive session meeting minutes dated August 5, 2024, August 19, 2024, August 23, 2024, and September 9, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Michael?
I'm an aye.
And I'm an aye. 5-0. We will return no sooner than 6 p.m. Going to call Select Board meeting back to order for Monday, September 23rd, 2024. We had executive session earlier this evening, and we took no action on item A or B. If you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John Small.
All right. I was going to say that. Also, I just want to remind everybody, as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. Is anyone here for public comment and announcements? Carolyn?
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to just briefly tell you about the October events that are coming up. The first one is that we are starting an October photo contest. We would like you to capture your best autumn-themed, try saying that, picture, and you can send it into the community center. There will be a prize given, and there is a team of judges, and we will have them displayed throughout the building. Next, when you're in the community center, please stop by and do the Guess the Candy Corn. We have an adult and a younger child version, so all of these events are, of course, free. On Thursday, October 3rd, from 4 to 5, a historic journey of the Mashpee Wampanoag is happening. Anawan Whedon of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe will be there. This is really something to be seen, so please mark your calendars for that. On October 4th, from 2:30 till 7, we're doing the teen clothing swap. This is a free event, and it is backed by popular demand. When we did it last year, we had so many requests to keep doing it. It is not only a necessity, but a lot of fun for everyone to come in and get new clothes and accessories. On October 11th at 6 p.m., we have our disaster and emergency preparedness for pets. October 17th is our boutique free costume pickup. And I would just make a public plea. This year, our costume donations are down. So if you have gently used costumes that you're not using, if you could pass them on, because there are a lot of families in the town who really rely on this service. Costumes can be very expensive if you have a lot of children, even one child at some point. So if you have costumes, please drop those off. We'll take care of packaging and cleaning them and everything else. So the event is October 17th, and we will somehow, some way have enough for everyone. But we would ask if anyone has any additional costumes, please drop those off. And lastly, our big event for October is October 25th from 6 to 8. We're having a Candy Corner and Crafts. So we're going to be creating some crafts with candy. There'll be other things involved too, but it will be I understand there's a few different things going on actual Halloween, so we decided to do it a little earlier so that people can decide to go out and do fun things. But all of these events are free and can all be seen on our website, and we thank you for the opportunity to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody else for public comment and announcement? Hearing nobody. Jeff, did you have anything for?
No, I don't. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
So we'll move to the consent agenda. If I can get a motion. Oh, sorry. On item A, we're holding, correct?
No.
You don't want to hold the 9th and the 23rd and the 9th?
Real vote. The 23rd?
These are for regular.
Yeah,
Not
so
executive.
you have anything in the,
You have the motion and the second in the 23rd meeting. To enter into an executive session.
I thought you had something to hold on that.
Give me 1 second. Yes, it's in there.
Okay, so then we can go ahead.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Yep.
sorry, Don, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure that the minutes that are currently up on the website are pulled down and replaced by these.
By these, yeah, okay. So, and please just send that email we talked about earlier as well. Okay, so sorry, Pete.
No, it's
go-
okay. Move to approve the Select Board, item A, approve the Select Board meeting minutes from August 23 and September 9, 2024. And item B, accept the resignation of Victoria Goldsmith from the Cultural Council, effective immediately.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion?
Just a few things on the 9th.
Mhm.
On page 2, I don't know how much this matters, to be honest, but I'm going to bring it up. Patrick Otten's name is spelled incorrectly. It says Patrick Otto.
Matters to him.
I think Carolyn Carey's last name is spelled incorrectly, which I can't even believe that can happen. But it's on page 2 as well, Carrie. And on page 5, that's not how you spell it? No. And then on page 5, yours truly is spelled incorrectly with the last consonant dropped, Mr. Handel. So, Select Board Member Handel.
At least you have a name.
I'm not opposed to moving these forward as long as those changes can be made or not made.
Okay,
I don't really care. But they're there.
okay. So I think those are easy enough in the sense of
Yeah.
being able to address them, excuse me. So,
Motion to approve with the outlined changes.
thank you.
Second.
Thank
Moved
you.
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Excuse me. On to new business.
I think we may have.
We didn't have open.
Sorry,
Public comment.
Why is it
excuse
so
me.
low?
Go ahead.
You okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Let me take over.
No, go ahead, it's good. Go ahead.
Teresa Johnson, North Harwich. I just have a couple of pictures. Can I pass them out to the board? That's
Sure.
why I was late. I was trying to print them out at home. I did email them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yes.
Not to beat a dead horse, but I'm talking about Pine Oaks Village with the traffic issue. I didn't know where the traffic study was, if they've issued their report. But those pictures I took on Saturday, and it's just an example of the road flooding that we deal with. That is near the intersection of Depot Street and Main Street. And then it also captions DPW trying to clear the road, excuse me, trying to clear the road. I ran up the stairs, at the Herring River where it floods over. So, I mean, this is nothing new for us. We deal with this all the time, but now I've got it in pictures to show you guys a visual of what we deal with in our neighborhood. It's not gonna get any better. With more cars, it's gonna get worse. We're worried about that little culvert giving way. It's very dangerous. you're talking, what was it, 2,200 more trips, or whatever the other traffic study said. You know, it's gonna increase the traffic, it's gonna make the roads more dangerous. One of those pictures, you can even see it says danger, hidden driveway, or limited sight. You know, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour there, but if the roads are flooded, car hydroplanes, it's not gonna make a difference how fast you're going.
So we are going to have a discussion on the, VHB contracts that are being executed currently. Was that tonight?
I'm announcing that they've
Yep.
been signed. VHB is working on both the North Harwich and the Harwichport traffic study.
Right.
I will be reaching out to them specifically to talk about the September 30th meeting, to have commentary ready for that, as well as to get a status update on our own traffic study.
Right. So that's where we are with that. I just want to let you know that, so you don't, if you don't plan on staying, that you at least have that information.
Okay, and then, so now the meeting on the 30th, couple of times it's been said that it's only gonna be financial items. We wouldn't still be able to talk about other items with the Pine Oaks Village
Well,
issues.
so Pine Oaks will have a traffic study of their own, but we're also doing our own. So that's what these contracts are related to. And go ahead, Joe.
Sorry. The
Go ahead.
public discussion on September 30th is for the board to hear from the public on any and all comments that they want to weigh in regarding the Pine Oaks proposed Phase 4. The topic that the board sends a letter back on is on the question of financing,
Right.
but that doesn't limit anybody at your meeting.
May I?
It's really what the board wishes to take in.
And we would do that at open or public comment, whatever it's called.
It's going to be an agenda item,
Under the-
so it's going to be
For
more than
public comment?
public
Okay.
comment,
Okay.
correct.
So if I may, just to be clear, Joe, the discussion at the public meeting, the agended item, can be on any topic to do with Pine Oaks Village, not just a financial lens, not through a financial lens.
For the public, correct.
Okay,
I
great.
guess-
So
guess-
I gave you bad information today, and I'm glad you asked your question, because I was under the assumption it was,
Okay,
So
good.
it's only, it's
Financial
for
only.
the public
Okay.
to comment on, as you said, any and all items related to that topic.
Correct. You're having a meeting on September 30th as part of your effort to gauge public input on the Pine Oaks Village Housing Phase 4 project.
Right.
So now, the reply that the board makes to the state, is that like to give it your blessing, or what is, does it, you submit it with
I'll go to Joe so
contingencies?
he can explain it methodically, better than
Or
I.
certainly try to. So what the town's been presented with is known as an application for project eligibility. That's what Pine Oaks is seeking from the state through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, herein referred to as EOHLC. They have given the town the required 30 days for the town to respond. So staff have been working on the different criteria that the state may rely upon in determining whether the project is eligible for financing. We assume, well, I'll say it this way if I could, I assume the state's going to approve the funding. The state has made it clear that they're supportive of any and all projects for affordable housing. All that means is the funding question was answered. If Pine Oaks goes forward after that project eligibility determination, if it's a positive one, they have, I believe, 18 to 24 months to seek a comprehensive permit to do the actual construction. That will be through the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Select Board could opine as a body. Individuals, members could opine if they wanted to. And I would imagine, and I'm hoping, as far as procedure goes, the town will be relying upon all the data that we have, as well as input that was given back when the project eligibility letter came up. So it's related to financing, but it's public input for the board. All of this imagines a future discussion on the permit of the project itself, which is the sole determination of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
So when the board submits their letter to the eligibility wherever the letter came from.
Yep.
Then can they write their concerns of what they're concerned about with the
The select
project as
board?
far as the, you know,
Yes.
the streets, the
Yep.
roads, the flooding, you know, whatever
I
the
have a
other
draft letter
criteria?
that I've been instructed by council, and I'm doing it anyway, where we have the framework of a response letter. It's gonna be filled in by staff responses, community responses, and then the plan is for the board to review that letter on October 7th, and then direct me to send it on October 8th.
So our concerns, the board will establish and communicate with,
Whatever that
Whatever
finalized
that board
document
is.
that this board agrees to and instructs the town administrator to send. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to mislead you. There's a more fundamental answer. We could very well give an opinion that we don't approve of this. We think it's a horrible project. We don't think that it fits in the spot. And that's one of many opinions that the state takes, and they could overrule us. We could give an opinion to the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, to say that we've got problems with this, and this. They are the deciding body, not us. So really, what's required in addition to anything we say is if you've got an opinion, you want that to go both to the state and to the ZBA directly with your opinions. You can't rely on us giving an opinion that's going to carry the day for you,
okay.
just so you get that.
Okay, so to Boston where they applied for that,
You get to put your
40B
own
and ZBA.
opinion letters in
Okay,
as the public.
okay,
Likewise, you get to go to every public meeting, so if the ZBA is holding a public meeting for a comprehensive permit relative to this project, you can go to that and say what you feel.
okay.
Joe?
Just procedurally, I would encourage people to direct commentary to the project eligibility process in October, September and October. I would not encourage anyone to send notice to the zoning board, because until they have it before them, and they have a regimented process, it can get lost. So this is the first major public input opportunity.
Thank you, Joe.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. We go on to new business, item A. Vote to designate in-person early voting hours and location for the November 5th, 2024 state election.
Madam Chair, I move the following in-person early voting schedule, week 1, Saturday, October 19, 2024.
Nope, sorry, that's a different
Okay,
meeting.
10 a to 4 p.m. Sunday, October 20, 2024, no in-person voting hours. Monday through Friday, October 21, 2024 through October 25, 2024, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Week 2, Saturday, October 26, 2024, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sunday, October 27, 2024, no in-person early voting hours. Monday through Friday, October 28, 2024 through November 1, 2024, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and the designated location being the town clerk's office.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Joe.
Sorry about that, Pete.
And then, item B, the discussion on Harwich Affordable Housing Trust cell phone tower revenue policy.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, for new business, item B, we are joined by your counsel, John Giorgio from KP Law. John and I spoke last week about new business, item B, new business, item C, and then, given John's availability, I would ask after that if you could take old business A after that, as John has joined us remotely, as is his ability today. He couldn't join us in person, but if you may recall, the cell phone tower revenue policy was a matter that the board had talked about. I believe you talked about it as most recently as your discussion with the finance director on September 9th. So what you have in your packet is the material that our former finance director had collated and shared with council. So you should have in your packet a Board of Selectmen policy, Harwich Affordable Housing Fund, is a 2-page document. It indicates that that policy was adopted June 30 of 2008. You have a copy of the Chapter 476 of the Acts of 2008, which allowed the town to establish an affordable housing fund. Again, this is a predecessor to your current trust fund. You can see after that, a Board of Selectmen policy, Harwich Affordable Housing Special Revenue Fund, that was adopted by the board in September of 2005. And then you have a packet of information that was originally provided by your former finance director. So this indicates a header of the cell tower lease revenue for the benefit of the Affordable Housing Trust review. It's dated February 23rd, 2024, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 5 pages, and then it's followed by Attorney Giorgio's opinion to the board that was shared back in June of this year regarding dedication of cell tower revenue. With that, Madam Chair, I would certainly yield to your counsel.
I have some questions before
Hold
that.
on. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Don. Hold on 1 second, John.
Through you, Madam Chair. John, are you aware that regarding what you think you have a complete picture of, that upon the departure of Kathleen, her week of departure, she gave a completely different opinion on whether there was a fund or wasn't, and that she believed that we had aggregated and the money was available? Frankly, I haven't had a chance. I did have a conversation with Eric, but I haven't had a chance to see what that collection would have looked like over the last 3 or 4 years that we didn't send it anywhere. But he also had the opinion that there was an alternative way of going. Have you any idea of anything that I'm talking about?
Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you all. No, I don't, Don. The last time I dealt with this was with the board at the June meeting that Joe mentioned. And I explained my opinion and provided several options for the board to consider if you were looking for ways to legalize, if you will, the dedication of that cell tower revenue to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But I don't know what transpired after that.
Well, and
ahead.
with Madam Chair's indulgence, with what you just said, I mean, because there are things missing that you don't know about yet. But beyond that, I may be the minority, I may not be the minority, but that fund preceded the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and they were not one and the same. I was looking for a mechanism, and this does not look any different from June, that would allow us to somehow have that available to do side projects that the trust was not interested in. And if that was an option, how would that look? I'm not seeing that here.
So I believe what I said in June was, the first option would be to just vote a dedication under Chapter 40, Section 5B, that all of that revenue going forward would go into an Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund. That's the first option. The second option would be to create by special legislation a dedicated fund. The advantage of that would be you could tailor that to your own liking. The disadvantage would be that would take some time to enact. The third option, which is what I discussed mostly with Kathleen and with the board, was that this board could adopt a policy that once the cell tower revenue, which has to be deposited in the general fund, once that is certified as free cash, I think your board could establish a policy to present an article every year to town meeting that would transfer a certain amount of free cash into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That would require a vote of town meeting, but it could be a policy of your board to do that. Now, with respect, Don, to any quote-unquote lost revenue that has not been placed in the Affordable Housing Trust, you could still do that as a policy, but it would have to come from free cash.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Kathleen, the week she left, said the money is there and it has been rolled over for the last several years. She was in error when she had spoken to you originally, that it does exist beyond the fiscal year that it was collected. We have an email
Where
from
is
her.
Where
Furthermore,
is that revenue?
Sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, Don, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but where is that revenue now? Where is it sitting?
that's one of the discussions I had with Eric, and I feel uncomfortable having too deep a discussion about this tonight without knowing that myself, because you don't know it, I don't know it. But I will throw out there that if he's available to have this conversation with you, rolling into this meeting, he had also had the opinion that he could create a revolving fund that would have the disbursement under the authority of the select board and the income flowing from the cell tower, and it would have to be dedicated to only affordable housing endeavors. Now, I don't know how that would work. I still feel like this is premature because you need to actually contact Eric because Kathleen's not here anymore and he's giving different opinions other than the last one she gave, and I think that you really need to have that email.
Excuse me, Don, is Eric your new temporary finance director?
So, John, it's Eric Kinscherf from Kinscherf and Associates. That's the reference to Eric. He's currently acting as our finance director / town accountant.
Okay, thank you.
And Ed Spellman is
happy-
working as the treasurer collector under Eric's firm.
Got it. I'm more than happy to talk to Eric. I'm more than happy to review any additional emails that you might have. And I pride myself on my open-mindedness.
Me too.
Well, just to follow up on the discussion that you outlined, though, in addition to what Dawn has just shared, originally we did talk about, out of the items that you had shared with us in June, was creating a policy. I believe that was the consensus of the board at the time. And other than having that conversation with Eric, I guess understanding whether or not a revolving fund, and there's been discussion about too many revolving funds as well. So I guess we just need to get that detailed information and then make a final decision.
I tend to trust us if we're the only ones who disperse from it.
Right. No, I get it, but I don't know if you have any other additional stuff you want to talk about on that, knowing that you still kind of need some more information from Eric.
No, I would be curious to hear Eric's thought about a revolving fund. That's typically a fund that identifies fees collected by the town for a particular purpose, and they can be expended by the approving authority without an appropriation at town meeting in order to support the programs for which the fees are charged. So I'm not, and that's really only prospective. I don't know how you could use a revolving fund to capture past revenue, but I can talk to Eric about that, and I will do so.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. So that covers us on, oh, sorry, Michael, I
Now,
apologize.
on a revolving fund, wouldn't that, and maybe, I guess to you, John, revolving fund, we would still have to, as we do with the rest of our revolving funds, go to town meeting and get authorization on the revolving fund every year, correct?
Yeah, you would first need to, under your bylaw, you would have to vote to establish the revolving fund. That's a town meeting vote. And then every year you have to go to town meeting to set the spending limit. That's correct.
Thank you. Further, thank you for stopping here with the conversation. I was really dreading going over that 75 pages that we've already been over 15 times. You know, the cleanest thing, and Don, to your point, I guess we need more information, but the cleanest thing is town meeting, and it's a warrant article by way of policy. I mean, I think that option really is what the board needs to look at. And I say that because, you know, it gives the voters the option. It gives the voters an option on what to do with that money. And if the Affordable Housing Trust is going as great as it is right now, then they would probably get the money if they're doing good projects. But let's just say the bulk of the residents think that they're doing a lousy job and they don't want to give them the money. They should have an option. So And what if there's a project that we want to work on that's not affordable housing, that would be a market rate? Based on how this was voted, can you do anything in market rate? That would be another question I would have, John. A project outside of what Affordable Housing Trust can do.
Yes,
Thank you.
you can certainly do a market rate project with free cash or any other um, set aside revenue. It would not be income limited, and as long as it's not also using either CPA funds or other affordable housing trust funds, I don't see why you could not do that.
Thank you.
Don?
Yeah, just trying to allay some of Michael's fears. You're right, we would have to go each year in that list of revolving funds. The advantage is that you wouldn't have to, like a stabilization fund, John, requires a disbursement vote at town meeting. If this was set up with an empowering amount at the beginning of at the town meeting for a revolving fund, anything that would be subject to that area and that authority would not need further appropriation because it's already been authorized at town meeting. The other one's
Correct.
clunkier. It takes a year to get money out of it.
Correct. That's all correct, Don.
Thank you, Don. Pete? Okay, so we'll move on to the next topic, John, in terms of the discussion on the concept of drafting a policy related to public comment.
How about, we were gonna skip to old business A for John's benefit.
Oh,
So if I
oh,
could.
sorry.
No, we do need counsel for this one, and then after this one.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought so,
Yep.
right?
Thank you.
So, obviously, we'll look to you, John, to give an outline on any kind of policy on public comment first, before I go to board members.
Sure. Sure. So this all came up, Madam Chair, in, I think it was March of 2023, when the Supreme Judicial Court issued their decision in Barron versus the town of Southborough. And Southborough, like Harwich and many, many other communities, Select Board had a regular agenda item called public comment, and it was which any member of the public can come up and speak. I won't go into the details of what happened in Southborough, but there was one particular member of the public who was extremely critical of the chair of the Select Board. I'm sure that never happens in Harwich, but it did happen in Southbridge. In essence, the chair ordered her to be quiet and had her removed from the meeting because she would not remain quiet. And the SJC said that if a town chooses to have a public comment period, and that's an important if, because unless it's a required public hearing, the public generally does not have a right to speak at a public meeting, although, as I said, most towns do provide a public comment period. So you are, by that decision, limited in how you can regulate that speech, which is a First Amendment issue. And again, I think you have our memo, our community update on this in your packet.
We do.
But essentially, you can regulate make sure that the public comment period is orderly. And that means you can set a reasonable time limit on public comments, and you can require that no one speak unless recognized by the chair. And, of course you do, I think you do that now. I'm not sure if you have any formal time limits, but maybe that's not been an issue. We've seen time limits anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. But that's the orderly part of this. The second part of this is that you can require that the comments be peaceable, which means the speaker may not threaten anyone with imminent physical violence or, violate the law in some way. That can be restricted. But those are the two very limited examples of how you can regulate public the public comment period. And I like to say that and I don't want to personalize this, and I've never been an elected official, but I have many, many times at town meeting or a select board meeting, people have said some pretty nasty things about me, and it really, really hurts my feelings when that happens. But the fact that my feelings are hurt, or your feelings are hurt, that's not a reason to shut down speech. You just have to grin and bear it, so to speak, or maybe not grin, but at least bear it. So, and that's really important because, you know, this all stems from the right of citizens to petition their government. And much of public comment is like the woman who spoke earlier is seeking some action by the board, which in most instances you'll take under advisement and maybe come back at a later meeting to discuss, which, by the way, is what I recommend in public comment. Try not to get into much of a discussion, but if the board wants it as an agenda item, you know, the chair can put it on at a future meeting. So we have developed, if you will, sort of our model public comment policy or protocol that if a town is interested in adopting something, and we certainly would recommend that you consider adopting a protocol. We're working on one right now in the town of Dennis. And I certainly, if you would like, would be more than happy to send you our model comment policy. You know, I would strongly encourage you to look at it carefully, decide whether you want to put a time limit on speakers and how long that should be. But you should have something in place that strikes the appropriate balance between First Amendment rights and having a orderly and peaceable meeting.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if you could share that with us so we could distribute to the board to review.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you, and I'll go.
And, you know, you can take it, you know, put it on an agenda, and I'm happy to come back and meet with you about that. Not one size does not fit all, so if there are parts of that you want modified, we could certainly talk about it and get something adopted.
Right, okay. Thank you, John. I'm going to go to board members to see if there's any follow-up. Pete?
No, I'll be happy to see that draft.
Okay, Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, I'm a little confused, and you know me with kind of populism views. I mean, I don't really want to kill an ant with a hammer, with a policy here. To the extent that there isn't anything egregious happening, what you described already exists as a felony, doesn't it? Where somebody verbally threatens you in proximity where you have reasonable belief that they will act upon it. Isn't that the very definition of an assault?
So that goes to the peaceable part of it, Don, but I do think you should think carefully about the orderly part of it.
No, I got that. I'm just concerned about the assault part of it because, I mean, there already is a law that covers that. If we feel intimidated to the point where we think they're going to act upon it, there already exists under law a mechanism for that.
Well, yes and no. Obviously, you know, when I was in law school, there was the age-old example of, can you stand up in a movie theater and shout fire? Is that protected under the First Amendment, or is it creating an imminent threat of injury or harm or violence? And I think the courts have generally come down on, no, you cannot do that because, yeah, you might be able to charge somebody with a felony later, but you have to be worried about the immediate impact. That is, at the meeting, what could happen and what the consequences could be if somebody really got out of hand. Now, I will tell you that I have seen a discernible change in public discourse, and I'm sure a lot's been talked about, but I'm sure you've seen it, I've seen it firsthand. The people are on edge. They feel passionately about things. They're unhappy. Whatever the reason is, the orderly portion of a meeting can get out of hand very quickly. And the threat that someone might be able to be charged with a felony later, well, I'm not sure that's going to solve your problem.
I'd like
That's
Pete, I'd like Pete, I'm waiting to see what that might look like, but I will say this. Even if you had that policy, if we don't have a method of effectuating it, like having a police officer here, it's nice that we got the policy, but I'm not sure how you would follow through on that. That's why I was going in the legal direction.
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of having a police presence, you certainly don't want to adopt that as a routine matter. I don't think you do anyhow. But there are certain topics where the chair and the vice chair can certainly anticipate that the feelings might be running very high and it's a heightened, I don't mean to use the word threat in the bad sense, but a threat of the meeting getting out of hand. And so in those circumstances, I'm sure it's happened in Harwich, you ask a police officer to be present just in case, the same way the moderator does at town meeting. And by the way, it's interesting, this decision did not involve a town meeting. So there was some discussion about, well, can the same rules apply at town meeting? And in my experience, most moderators have looked at that Barron decision and have modified their rulings in accordance with sort of the spirit and intent of that decision.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Don. And I mean, I suppose, John, if we were in a situation, if we did come up with the time limit of 3 minutes and somebody exceeded that and then went on to, rant and rave, we can always at that point say that we could leave the room or amend the meeting at that point.
Yeah, I usually recommend a 3 strikes you're out kind of situation. I would never kick somebody out of the meeting. I was at a town meeting where someone got up and used extremely foul language. And the moderator said, there'll be none of that foul language at this town meeting. And if you say anything like that again, I'm going to tell the police to escort you out of the meeting. I won't mention the name of the moderator, but except it was not Mike Ford, I can assure you that.
Thank you.
I usually recommend a 3 strikes you're out, a gentle warning, a more stern warning, and then if they're just completely out of control and you can't get the business done, you say the appropriate things about the meeting having to be orderly and peaceable. And if it happens one more time, I'm going to ask the police to escort you out of the meeting.
Right. Any other comments from Jeff or Michael?
The only thing, hi, John, it's Jeff. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Jeff.
If I heard you right, you said your recommendation is to adopt some policy, not just to have no policy. Did I hear you right?
That's correct.
Okay.
You did.
Yeah. So, and thank you for that. And I think I'm excited and looking forward to seeing what you can provide to us as a working model that we can see if it's applicable to our town of Harwich. I think, I think Harwich holds itself to a higher standard than the war ground that you were just discussing. But I still I'm looking forward to seeing the working model of what you can provide us.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Jeff, you're welcome. The reason I recommend a policy is you want to make sure that you apply any requirements in a uniform manner, and that you don't subject the board to an accusation of sort of a discriminatory motive or something like that, or somehow denying people equal protection under the law. And the way you do that is you adopt a policy. It has to be somewhat flexible, but it applies to everyone speaking during public comment, regardless of the content of the speech.
Makes sense. Thanks again.
Michael? Nothing? Okay, so now we will jump on to old business, item A, so that we can let John leave us. Discussion on 2025 annual town meeting warrant articles, the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund, the WIF.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Julie. So this is a tool that the legislature provided, I think it's about 10 years ago now. It's Chapter 40, Section 39M of the General Laws. And whenever I talk about the WIF, that's what we call it, I tell people, think CPA. Okay, it's very similar in that it's a two-step process for adoption. You have to have a town meeting vote, and if that passes, then you have to have a ballot question. But it allows the town to impose a surcharge on real estate taxes of up to 3%. And the town meeting vote and ballot question would specify the actual percentage. That money is collected and it goes into this WIF, which is a Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. It accumulates in that fund, I believe with interest, and then you can appropriate money from that fund for water, wastewater, or stormwater infrastructure. And one of the reasons why it's become very popular is you can adopt a WIF even, I know it's not the case in Sandwich, I'm sorry, in Harwich, but let's say, for example, the major wastewater projects that you have are not for 5 years out. This allows you to establish the fund, start collecting the revenue. The revenue is dedicated and reserved to those purposes. And then when time comes that you actually have to spend it, you go to town meeting and you appropriate it. It's a simple majority vote to adopt the statute, and it's a simple majority vote to appropriate money from the fund. Let's see, the towns of Dennis, Sandwich, and I believe Yarmouth have already adopted the WIF through the town meeting, town election process. And I'm sure that Sandwich wouldn't mind my telling you this, but they recently had an opportunity to buy some very critical land that they need for wastewater. They had the money sitting in the WIF, and they had actually at town meeting appropriated, it last May appropriated, I think it was around $3 million for wastewater infrastructure needs. And as it turns out, this property went into bankruptcy. The bankruptcy trustee was selling the assets, including land, which happened to be very well suited for wastewater. And the town was able to put together through the select board a bid and submitted it to the bankruptcy court. And there's a hearing in a week or two where the trustee is going to seek approval from the bankruptcy court to sell the land to the town. So it can be a very useful tool if it's managed properly. The process, as I said, is a town meeting vote to adopt the statute and set the percentage. Once that happens, you then, at the next annual election or state election that's held at least 60 days after the town meeting vote, you have a ballot question, which actually town council prepares. And if that passes by a majority vote, you have your WIF. So from a timing standpoint, I'm just going to give you two examples. From a timing standpoint, if you were to adopt the WIF at the May 2024 annual town meeting, because there is no state election next year, you would have to wait until May of 2026 for the ballot question. And if it passed at the May ballot, it would go into effect on July 1st of 2026. That's when you would start collecting the revenue. If you wanted to advance that, you would have to have a vote at a special town meeting sometime between now and, I haven't done the math, but maybe it's March or something, because it has to be 60 days. You could adopt it at a special town meeting, and then it would be on the ballot for the 2025 annual town election. The election portion may not occur at a special town meeting. It has to be either a special town election. It has to be either at the annual town election or the next state election.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the WIF? Michael?
No questions.
Jeff?
No.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, I'm fairly certain that some of these WIFs were set up by taking a slice out of the CPC money, which was already a surcharge on the taxes. And the reason I bring that up is, especially in this kind of financial environment, I kind of myself would be really reticent putting another 3% on top of the 3% for the CPC, on top of the borrowing we have for the sewering, on top of our taxes. I think it would be kind of an unfair thing to do, especially at this moment in time, unless it was net
Yes,
neutral.
So Don, I'm aware of one situation where that occurred, and what the town did was reduce the CPA by 1%, so it went down to 2%, and adopted the WIF, I believe, at 2%. So at the end of the day, there was a 2% WIF and a 2% CPA. Those were all done at the same town meeting and the same election. And of course, the voters have the ultimate say, because if you did that, the voters could say yes to the WIF and no to the CPA reduction, right? Or vice versa. So, there's no real way to control that, but of course, the people will have spoken at that point.
Thank you, John. Anything else? Pete?
No, thank you.
Nothing? Thank you, John. We appreciate the info. And I guess, Joe, do you have any comments or anything you wanted to add?
Just that if the board is going to consider this new fund, I think council has done a great job telling you the timeframes and all of that. And I appreciate the prior speaker talking about the surcharge aspect of it. I know that this is a topic that's been talked about, I think probably going back to the inception back in 2015. But it is something that the board had asked me to research with our finance director back in 2020. So here we are again. So there would be some key questions that the board would want to further discuss and debate. And I think you can see that in the Word document that has the highlights and the bold. Otherwise, I'd just look to the board to give direction as to when or if you want this to come back.
So,
If I may,
yeah, go ahead, John.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just wanted to, because I forgot to say something, you could certainly do something with a combination between the WIF and the CPA. You could also consider starting off slowly, which is what Dennis did. They adopted the WIF, but only at 1%. And now there's an article on the warrant next Monday, a week from tonight, to increase that, I think, to 2%, which you can do through the same process. So you can start small and do it incrementally as an option.
So is Dennis doing 3% CPA plus 2% on the WIF?
They did not reduce the 3% on the CPA. They currently have 1% on the WIF, and I think they're going to 2%. So they'll have a total of 5% between the two funds.
Thank you.
But, don't hold me to that. I don't have the warrant in front of me, but that's my recollection. I believe Yarmouth went in a similar way. They started off with a 1% WIF. I don't know if they've increased it or not.
Okay. Joe?
And then the only other thing I would mention is, you have the materials in your packet, you have the guidelines from the Department of Revenue. I think it's important to also note that I believe, John, please correct me when I'm wrong, but similar to the CPA surcharge, after a period of 3 years, if the town decides you want to revoke that, you can unwind it, I believe, by a vote of town meeting. So it's not permanent if you do this.
Yeah, no, it requires a ballot question as well.
A ballot
Joe.
question, sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Yep. But yes, you can unwind it. As they say, there's nothing certain in this world except death and tax.
Right.
But this is a tax, so it's not certain, so I guess I used the wrong analogy.
So I guess I'm looking to the board to ask if the consensus is to have something drafted for, to move forward for town meeting next year. Are we on that plane, or are we looking to continue discussion on this, or? Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd love as a precursor to even having that discussion, have the CPC come in and have the discussion about how they might feel if we started piggybacking on
Yeah, good.
their funds.
So why don't we have that be our next move? We'll talk to CPC. And then we'll get back to, obviously, Joe and you, John,
Okay,
right? And I think that's all we have for you, so that you can depart.
thank you very much. I can put my grandchildren to bed,
Aw.
so thank you for that.
That's nice. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Take care. So on to item D, under new business. Discussion on creating a wastewater construction manager position. Votes may be taken. Joe, do you want to have a conversation?
So I would redirect it to the vice chair who put this on, and he may redirect it to anyone else.
I'm going to redirect it over to Select Board Member McCaskill for that.
Excuse me.
I brought this up with the importance of this project and $50 million appropriation. I think we're doing a disservice to the residents by not having somebody like a Charlie Sumner, not necessarily a manager position, but project manager. We had one in the last round. I know we've done this before, but the thought of our residents having to call a consulting group, GHD, whenever there's an issue or to get details, doesn't seem right to me. And obviously, there's money in that appropriation for such a thing. So I would certainly support having somebody on town staff like we did with Charlie Sumner on Phase 2. I think he did contracts 1 and 2, if I remember correctly, but I'd support that.
Okay.
And if not, I'd like to hear what GHD's services are gonna be and how quickly they'd be able to respond. Are they planning on having a dedicated person? But I'd like to know more details.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with having somebody act as, I think at one point, we had $150,000 in a separate budget to have almost like an owner's contractor. So I'm in favor of anything that helps facilitate that process, but Jeff, did you have a comment?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I'm in favor of it. I'd just like to understand what it's going to cost. And if that $150,000 that you speak of is still there and accessible, and if not, then how do we fund it?
Yeah, I think, so we can actually follow up on, well, Joe may have that information as well, but I don't believe that original amount was there. I think it got moved, but I could be wrong on that. And maybe that's more of a question for Noreen at one point, and not to bring water into this in that sense, but I thought that there was some money set aside. So I guess that's my first question is, do we still have that money? Dawn, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'm actually going to see Michael's bet and raise it. To be honest with you, based on our experience on larger building projects of any sort, not just sewering, but any sort, we tried over the last 5 or 6 years to save money, and it only inevitably cost us either time and/or money for the result of the project. I don't care whether you're talking about the fire station or the Brooks Academy or any number of things. I mean, we're better served if we have a project manager on these things, because none of us is going to go down every day and check to see what's going on.
So just to clarify, are we talking about a contracted OPM or a town employee wastewater construction manager?
No, it would be not a town employee.
We're talking about a contracted
Right.
OPM.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of it. Michael's point, a project of this scope and cost, the people in town should have a dedicated source that they can reach out to. And quite frankly, we should have a dedicated source that we can reach out to.
Right. Joe?
Just from a procurement standpoint, I don't think we can refer to it as an owner's project manager. I believe that there's elements of that role within the GHT contract. However, and I think references earlier, Charlie Sumner worked for Weston and Sampson. Weston and Sampson had a community outreach person. So that may be the way to go, but the phrase owner's project manager means something very specific under public procurement, and you have construction starting in next month, essentially. So I think it's too late or not proper to do owner's project manager. But community representative or community outreach or anything of that nature you can do. And if there is funding available, that's a pretty straightforward acquisition of a dedicated resource for community questions.
So if Charlie was doing it for Weston and Sampson, then how can we go about looking for a third-party source for that? Because they
So I believe Weston and Sampson was contracted under Chapter 30B to provide the service of community outreach, so that Charlie had a dedicated place, phone number, and was able to respond back to community inquiries. So Weston and Sampson was not the contractor or the engineer, that was CDM Smith and two different firms. So I believe that's how, I'm not familiar with Phase 1, I am familiar with Phase 2, as far as it relates to the comprehensive wastewater management plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, for one, am not really interested in somebody who's a public relations position. I was thinking more of a project manager myself, I'm not sure. I'll defer to Pete. When we were building Monomoy, wasn't there someone who was not part of the contractor who was there as a project manager to watch the progress of it?
I believe so, but you're not going to catch my memory on that.
Yeah.
I'm not objecting to the concept of an owner's project manager, and I also want to put it, I'm not objecting to anything. I'm trying to help the board with your discussion.
Oh, it's-
But the time to have done an owner's project
Right.
manager would have been several years ago when we were preparing these bids for the construction. So GHD, I'll let them speak to it, but they do have dedicated resources within their company who are actively responding to inquiries from the public. If you want to expand upon that, we can go that community outreach model per se. And then generally speaking, I get questions all the time and I respond to them as well. So I don't think owner's project manager, if that's what you're looking for, I think, because that's under procurement and I believe under construction permit, procurement.
Okay.
Madam Chair. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I don't want to split hair over words. We don't call it owners, we call it a project manager. Can we get a definitive answer from council? You understand what we're after?
You can absolutely hire a project manager,
Right.
if you want to call it that. That topic is allowed under Chapter 30B.
Perfect. And that's where I would go. I would be, I don't want to call it a community relations. I think at this point it would be, as we're all aware, we're in charge of construction. Nothing goes to the water commissioners now until the water starts flowing. So we are in charge of this project, and I would feel comfortable for us and the residents if we had somebody on the management level running this project. And a $50 million project, whatever it costs us in a couple of years it's gonna take us, it's money well spent.
Jeff?
The only thing I would add to that, and I think that was laid out perfectly, Michael, is I'd like to see the precise, like the exact scope of what this project manager,
Like job description.
100%.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the width of that scope
Joe?
tonight.
Are you-
No, just kidding.
Are you looking for staff to do that? Because from a procurement standpoint, staff would be looking for that as well.
I'm looking for someone, I guess, if not the board, to create the scope of what we're looking for, if that's appropriate, or if there's a mechanism out there already, or a form out there already for such.
Maybe we could take a look at what the scope was for Charlie
Sure.
and use
Start
that
with
as a draft. Do you have, yeah?
Yeah, and I would defer to the town administrator to talk to the consultant that has an awful lot of contracts with us right now, to give us some sort of idea of scope as well. I believe GHD could offer something here as far as what that scope would be, based on what they do for other projects. But given their relationship with us and everything they do, I don't see that they're gonna Bach at Joe Collin and saying, what do you think a job description would look like for this?
I would imagine they'd want to have some input anyway, since they're going to be working closely with project manager.
And is it the board's intent to take current staff out of the equation?
I'm a little confused at what you mean by take current staff out of the.
We're not going to make the call to
So
GHD to ask them, though.
Town administrator is responsible for construction and procurement jobs. I've been meeting weekly with GHD and water wastewater. Are you looking to add to that or to take it away?
No, I think we're looking to add to that. We're looking to have somebody also dedicated to field those questions, as Michael was saying. That, so it would be an additional, so it would be extra support, really. Okay?
Yes. I think I've heard a few messages versus you don't want a community outreach person, but you do want somebody that the community can reach out to. You want somebody that can advise on the project.
And it's progress.
Say again?
And it's progress. So if there's, I get what you're saying, Joe, but nobody's expecting you to spend another 40 hours beyond the 40 hours you're here to be able to do just one thing, which is watch that project as it unfolds. It's a little difficult for you to do that, too. We're looking for somebody that would take the lead role in that and advise us if it's falling behind or whatever.
So if we use comprehensive wastewater management phase 2 as a guide, I missed all of the bidding and was the assistant town administrator after the bids were accepted and after phase 2 was split into 2 contracts. I was here for the entirety of that. I know we're talking 28 versus 42 million. We're talking East Harwich. We're talking 1 vendor instead of 2. I don't recall what you're envisioning for phase 3 that you had in phase 2. Is there something in phase 2 that you had that you want to duplicate in phase 3?
So other than you're saying, other than that community outreach person?
Well,
Right.
I guess,
Yeah.
in phase 2, you had 2 construction vendors, you had representatives from the Water Wastewater Department Administration, DPW, Health, Police and Fire, and you had the, if I haven't already said it, I apologize, and the community outreach through a contract with Weston and Sampson.
So, I mean, my opinion on that is that community outreach, that phase 2 seemed to go well with Charlie Sumner in that kind of position. I'm not opposed to community outreach. Whatever helps facilitate the process and does not add additional burden to you or staff and helps facilitate. That's what I'd be looking for. Understanding that procurement in an OPM position is quite different than, and to your point, should have been done a while ago.
Not to make the case for the current engineering firm, that's not what I intend to do. However, their structure is such that, as you did the deep dive on September 4th, so you met Mark Drainville. Mark Drainville is the principal at GHD. He's my primary point of contact. For phase 3, the project manager is Jeff Gregg, but the project day-to-day is Ivan Gomez. So they have a structure there as well. So generally speaking, I would argue that I believe it's within the current scope for GHD. If you wanted to have regular board meeting updates as well as community outreach, that is something that Mark or Jeff could already do, and they're already paying for it. And we can augment that with community outreach. So you already have a structure in place. We're already paying GHD for that. So you could do that and add to it. There.
Okay. Understood.
Yep.
Pete?
So along those lines, we'd like to see some type of outline job description for a project manager. Perhaps we could get greater clarity from GHB regarding what they would actually do for us.
Correct.
So, spell it out black and white, what we're entitled to in the existing contract, what services they'll perform for us. Because to Michael's point, we're responsible for this project.
Right.
We all sit here every week talking about all the things we're dropping on Joe's plate. If we can lighten the plate a little
Right.
bit, if we can support it in some fashion, that's what we want to accomplish, to give the residents in town the best bang for their buck, the most responsive, timeframes for their questions, yet support us in our role to make sure we understand what's going on, if something is going on that we need to be aware of that we're not, and then be able to react on it, so.
I agree. So I think that's the place we start.
And can I build on that, because I realized I did not do my public comment reminder? So we do have the Phase 3 construction community engagement forum on Tuesday, October 1st, at the community center at 6:30. I say that because a lot of these roles, there are going to be individuals there that we're going to highlight. So we can also talk about at that community engagement, that the town may be bringing in additional resources to help. But you are going to see Jeff Gregg. I'm not sure if Ivan Gomez is going to be here on October 1st, because he will be the primary on November 1st. So we can add that to the discussion on October 1st. Because the point of the community engagement forum is for anyone that's interested in this to see the names and faces and the titles that are going with this project.
So-
And although, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Madam
go-
Chair,
no,
if I
go
could,
ahead.
and I'm sure the September 30 agenda is already pretty full. However, I would think VHB could turn this around quickly. Even if we don't have some type of job description for a project manager, we could at least see what they have, or what they're offering as services that we're already paying for, to begin that conversation prior to the meeting on the 1st.
I think we can.
Yeah, I can reach out to Mark tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Can we get copies of what's currently in place with GHD contracts? What we've done recently, just the actual contracts? Whatever we're open
Yep.
with GHD now, can we get those copies?
Now, and when you say we, town, water and sewer?
Town
Water,
Irish.
wastewater, excuse me.
Really just the town, because
Yep.
my understanding is the water commissioners have made it very clear that they're taking over when the water starts running, and that's something not to be lost here. We had Dan Pelletier on the last phase,
Mhm.
and he played an instrumental role in talking to the public, and he was very, very, very involved. This is gonna be very different. We do not have that person now, and to Pete's point, not just continue to dump in a lap. I'm interested in some of the other stuff getting done, so the more we can take off your plate, the better.
thank you. Jeff? No? Okay, so we'll have a draft for the next meeting on the 30th. Any other comment? Oh, sorry, Mark?
Yeah, hi. Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. The only thing, I agree with the scale of this project. You need a town staff involved. Just one thought is, if you're still looking for a town engineer, this is kind of the project that a town engineer could really oversee and give guidance to, and maybe have a field man just checking on, things, conditions out in the field. I do know in Chatham, there was Bob Duncanson, whose title is Director of Natural Resources, I believe, acted as the project manager. So I think what Joe is getting to makes sense, but I do think you need somebody from the town just protecting our interests. And Duncanson did that. I remember he'd be on the phone with my wife getting electrical connections and things like that. So if you're still looking for a town engineer, rather than duplicating positions, that's something to look at.
I believe the town engineer position continues to be advertised, correct?
Correct.
And
So,
difficult job to fill.
If we can get somebody there, there could be
Right.
your answer.
If we
so.
could just get somebody.
Yeah.
If you know anyone, tell them.
I'm going back to UMass Civil Engineering in any day now. I'll get it by 80.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to the next item. And so, I have a question on this, but I'll first go on to does anyone want to make a motion on it? I guess I'll first ask. but, Does anyone have any background information?
Yeah, I do,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
this was,
all right.
but I defer to you if you're wanting to say something.
No votes are necessary. I believe the vice chair can provide an update as well as I on this topic.
Okay,
It's following up on the board's discussion with the finance director on September 9th.
And the discussion was to reconcile or true up the CPC numbers. And at that meeting, Eric Kinshirf was, he and I had a discussion about him calling, for lack of a better word, Joe, the whale. What was the name of the company that?
So Powers and Sullivan
Yes.
is what we know are, they're now known as Markham.
Right. So,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
so Powers and Sullivan was called by Eric Kinshirf. It's a 5-year look back, is what we had discussed in Julie's absence. And to complete that 5-year look back and reconcile true up the CPC numbers, the cost was $15,000. So I bring it back on this agenda to see where the board sits with that.
Okay. I'll open it up then to any questions on this item. Pete?
Is it an average of 3,000 a year?
I think it was front-loaded, Pete.
You know, as we talked during that meeting, you know, it's a exercise that we believe needs to happen. Clearly, I'd rather spend less than $15,000, but if that's the cost associated to make sure, you know, accounts are true and accurate, then so be it.
All right, Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Pete, and I actually agreed with Jeff. Bottom line here is we've gone through 3 full-time and now a contractor person as finance director. And it'd be really nice to have somebody give us an authoritative accounting for what's in each bucket and what has been spent and what's still there. So I support the idea. I agree with Pete. If they could do it for $15, I'd really like that, but $15,000, if that's the going rate, that's it.
Michael?
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I support it.
So if I could, Madam Chair, I would like to just throw out there to the board, what happens year after year after year once this is done? Should this reconcile itself year after year going forward? This is a one-off
Yes.
to get it right? Is that, okay?
So we know what real zero is.
What real zero is. And then my next question would be, how do we fund it?
Oh, sorry, Charlie.
So, I cannot recall off the top of my head if accounting, auditing services are exempt from 30B procurement. If they're not exempt, we now have the going rate, so the town would have to seek 3 quotations. We only need 1 to come back, but might need to seek 3. Generally speaking, you have an audit budget. I would recommend you use the audit line item, and then as we get to town meeting, you could augment that with a transfer either at a special within the annual or at a reserve. So the dollar amount and the funding is not necessarily the issue for me. It's the manner by which we bring somebody under contract. Because as much as I appreciated the humor, the $15,000 is a one-time rate, flat fee, where they look at 5 years.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
sadly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'm just curious, if memory serves, doesn't the CPC actually have an administrative line item available to it to spend?
Yes, in Harwich, we appropriate money for administrative expenses. However, I believe there's at least a dotted line where the CPC would have to agree to that. The chair, I think, has the power to sign warrants, so I wouldn't be reaching over the dotted line to grab the money, absent a vote of the board and discussion with CPC.
No, I was just suggesting it would be in their best interest to cooperate as partners with us in
Well, I don't
this.
disagree at all. And if I could, that also gives us an idea of where we might be able to take money from in the future.
I didn't say that.
I still go back to the audit that, Powers did
Not you.
and
No,
say,
the real one.
No, sorry, no. Powers and whatever, the last part is escaping me.
The 2 Irish surnames there, Powers and Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. But
Minnows, I believe.
it was, the minnows, I guess it was, prior to the whale purchasing them. That was audited as well annually. I mean, I'm not opposed to truing up numbers, but I hope that this is it, because we've had audits, and those numbers have been checked. And except for one scenario of a double dip, which supposedly was corrected, I'd hope that this is the end of it, because 15 grand is 15 grand, so.
Is this I'm sorry, go ahead. Do something.
No, I would agree with Julie, and I would hope that we can get to the point where 1 + 1 is 2. But we don't seem to be there. And in the presentation that we had a week ago, Eric had the true-up sheet and the numbers there, and there was no amount of money in the administrative cost line. And then there was a $400,000 number, and then we all know that when Anne Marie came on board, she thought Carol did something wrong, so she changed it. And then when Kathleen came on, she thought Anne Marie did something wrong and maybe Carol did it right, she changed it. Either way, I might be getting the sequence wrong, but things have been changed.
Pretty close.
But it'd be,
Yeah. You're right.
it would
Right.
be nice to get
To
an
have the
actual
final,
number,
right.
and then hopefully we can stay on that number.
And then hopefully that 15 gets calculated.
Well, are we able to use FinCom's emergency fund for this? Is that available?
Technically, no, but that doesn't mean you couldn't ask and cajole, meaning FinCom has control over that line item.
Right.
It's a separate line under the budget, so it's theirs. But I believe, as your members have said before, those are funds that the town's aware of and are available for these sorts of purposes. So, same situation. You could strongly ask. Regardless, Madam Chair, if I could, you do have your finance director coming back next week to talk about a number of topics related to finance. I would recommend in the short term, I heard where the board's coming from. I will confirm if it's not exempt from 30B, there are two other firms that I can very quickly reach out to. I'm familiar with the conversation that Eric had with Markham, so it would really just be, look, we're looking for somebody to do a specialized audit of CPC reports for the last 5 years. Are you interested in what's your rate?
Right.
So we can get that going fairly quickly. In the short term, I would recommend that we rely upon the audit line item in the accounting budget, simply because the accountant can confirm those funds are available. But if we diminish it, we can replenish it later.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I sit here and ponder this, and I truly don't want to open up another front here, but by law, as my recollection serves, the Affordable Housing Trust has to be able to provide a year-end debit and credit statement for the public's benefit. I'm not sure, given what Michael was saying about how we just went through two different town finance directors, I'm not sure if that's been done over the last 2 or 3 years. And some of that money comes from the CPC. I was just wondering if there's an appetite to look into that too, because to my knowledge, the last one was 3 years ago, where I saw a reconciliation of funds
For the trust?
for the trust. It has to come from the finance director.
I believe the last two finance directors have done reports. I know that the current finance director would also have that responsibility, so perhaps when he does it,
Can we just check, though, to make absolutely certain that that happened?
if you want to take first-person source, I've seen the reports from both Anne Marie and Kathleen. So I do know that they did reports to the trust fund.
Yeah, I mean, the trust fund wouldn't be looking,
And
obviously, if
again,
they've done that.
point being that it's an annual effort, and it is something that Eric would be working on.
Yeah,
So we can have him verify what they've done.
That's all I ask.
yeah, fine, okay. Okay, so, on to the next item. Under old business, which is item B now.
Madam Chair, I move to approve a special permit application for a one-day entertainment permit for Mary Smith, event to be held at Brooks Park on October 6, 2024, 2:30 PM to 5:30 PM. Entertainment type, live recorded music, amplification, dancing, and concert.
Second.
So moved and seconded. I have one question on this, though.
You missed the excitement.
Oh, okay. Well, you had this discussion, so, yeah, this is.
Go ahead.
It was agended with a liquor license, but this application says no liquor to be served, or alcohol to be served.
Mrs. Smith is with us, I believe.
Oh, it's, Mrs. Smith.
Patiently waiting.
So, I'm sorry. I
That
don't
was
mean
the
to-
hang-up.
I don't mean to hold this up any further. My only question really is to this board is that, you know, the whole, did you already have a discussion about?
I think I know where you're going with
Yeah,
this, so.
because I'm just looking to
Yeah.
maintain the straight line, so, was there a discussion about nonprofit versus?
A small one?
Brief.
what the problem was at the time was it was agended as a request for a one-day liquor license.
yeah.
But the request that we had in the packet was not for that, so it wasn't accurately agended.
I see,
But we briefly touched upon the
Nonprofit.
nonprofit status.
We're okay with that.
okay, all right. So, that's all I wanted to know.
Yes.
So, okay, there's a motion and a second?
And that's true, correct? No alcohol, just,
So,
Okay.
you want them to come up, or?
No,
Where- Did you just invite us?
no, it's fine.
I'm good then.
Yeah, okay, so we got a motion and a second, right? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Sorry to make you wait so long.
My poor husband's wife, chief financial officer for Latham, so he's like sitting all the time.
Oh, jeez.
Did you bring your resume?
If I could, while you're here, we should have that available sometime tomorrow afternoon. So if you reach out to Danielle, she'll have that for you.
Yay.
Good- Yep, good luck.
Thank you. Next item. It's back again.
No, this is actually an improvement. Can-
Go ahead, Don, why don't you read the item?
It has to do with the Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee charge, which I modified, and as I promised Michael, I sat down with Megan when she came back, and she said it doesn't impinge on her authority whatsoever. Hers is mostly facilities-oriented. And it still has the fail-safe that if they're going to get deep into anything, they have to ask us for permission because they're advisory.
So Megan, you already had that discussion.
I promised Michael I would, and I did.
Okay.
I move that we accept the Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee charge presented by Select Board Member Howell as presented in the packet.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Michael.
I feel like it's like, good night, John Boy.
I hope it's good
give it
night,
8
John Boy, in a
minutes.
couple minutes.
Give it 8 minutes, and I hope that is the conversation.
Contracts? Joe?
So you have, first, a contract with Ballard Max Sales and Services for the purchase of a roll-off truck in the amount of $254,122.
So moved.
Thank you, because I,
Second.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. B?
Move that we approve a contract with Ballard Max Sales and Service, Inc. for the purchase of a six-wheel dump truck in the amount of $256,966.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
A
Oh,
question, Madam
sorry.
Chair, if I could. Historically, is it past practice to take from Peter to pay Paul, to take from one article to pay the other?
Now, is this relative to this particular contract?
Yeah, item B was, the vehicle came in $6,966 greater than the approved article. And it states that they took, what I believe it said is the balance from item A to cover it, because item A came in some $35,000 shy, if I read it correctly.
So, just look at, so yes, in the sense that if you see that both of these, so the residual of A is being applied to the purchase of B. And that's allowed under mass financing because they both emanated from the same town meeting article.
Okay.
So they're in that for the purchase of vehicles.
Because they came from the same cap plan.
Because it came from the same article.
But, which was that the, no, that was
I
the
have
funding.
that as
That was the
Article
funding
18.
source, yep, gotcha, right. Okay, thank you.
Yep, and it could have further, but that's the most solid answer. It's
Yep.
the same article.
All right, excellent. And while I have, before, I was gonna ask it at the end, I might as well, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. Do I assume that, so, once these three vehicles are purchased, the remaining funds then get turned back over to the town? These don't sit in some article in perpetuity, correct?
They do not sit in the article in perpetuity because we have the practice and the policy of going through old articles. So we, either me or the finance director would come back and say, We'd either look for a repurpose, that would be an article at town meeting that calls back to that, or any other action to close that out.
Okay.
But it is an active process of administration and finance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had that was a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Madam Chair, just one thing on that.
Yeah?
And Pete, to your point, administration has done some work, and we haven't seen the detail of it yet on all old remaining articles with what's in it for balances, so that we can have a discussion about that.
Okay.
Traditionally, we have used old articles and then present them as Joe said, but there might be a point where this board decides that we should just turn those back over to the town
Right.
and have every article new at town meeting
Correct.
on its own merits.
Right. Right.
So-
Okay, thank you.
And I will ask the chair for that agenda item at some point when we're caught up.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael.
Before we go ahead, what was C? Madam Chair, it may just be that I have a blind spot here, but I'm familiar with Mack tools. I'm familiar with Mack trucks. They're spelled differently. But Mack trailers, is this like Mack as the truck company? Item C? If it were, I'm fine
The
with
short
that.
answer is no.
There actually
It is a description name, I believe, not a brand name.
Okay.
However, if you give me a moment. I want to be clear, we're talking about item C, Robert Childs
Yeah,
Incorporated.
yeah.
So, the dealer is Robert Childs Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
The manufacturer is Mack, M-A-C Trailer Manufacturing. So it is not the Mack truck as we know it, M-A-C-K, with the pronounced Bulldog. It is a different
Yeah, I just wanted to
trailer brand.
verify that because it seemed like a strange coincidence.
But you do not have a motion or a second.
Yeah. Can I get a motion on,
I move that we approve a contract with Robert Childs, Inc. for the purchase of a dump trailer in the amount of $82,413.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, town administrators report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As was previously mentioned, there were two, what we refer to as on-call contracts that I signed. There were three on-call contracts. I believe at your last meeting, I would have announced the contracts with VHB for subdivision review in lieu of our town engineer, contract with VHB in lieu of our engineer for stormwater analysis, and now we have on-call contracts with VHB, two separate agreements. The first one with VHB is for traffic studies in North Harwich for $60,000, and the second one is for traffic studies through VHB for Harwichport. And again, both of those are $60,000 each. And then lastly, I'm thrilled to announce that we had a vacancy, we have a few more, I think, but we had vacancies in the mechanic roles in the Harwich Department of Public Works. I have offered and Mr. Gonzalez has accepted, so Anthony Gonzalez has been hired to be a mechanic for the town of Harwich. He has extensive experience as a mechanic and will be able to fit right in with the team. And he is scheduled to start, I believe, I don't think I had it, but I believe by October 1st. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Select board members report. Pete?
Nothing this evening, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Don?
It's been really damp.
Jeff?
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Michael?
Just an ask, could, Joe, the last two contracts that you mentioned with VHB, can you send them to the board?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you the whole packet, which includes the pre and post.
Thank you. Nothing else.
Okay.
Motion
And
to
I-
adjourn?
Well, I just, hello.
She still is here.
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Jeff, for covering as chair for the last 2 meetings, and thank you to board members for moving items along. I appreciate it, and that's it.
We typically, we're
Motion
going
to
to triple
adjourn.
that.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.